and today we're going to be working on some Yoshi Eggs soap craft. Right here I already have pre-made the Yoshi's eggs themselves. They have a loofah in the egg shape. They've been scented and colored, as you can see. One of the things we're going to need to do first is I have my handy dandy crock pot, and within it I have 3 1-cup mason jars, a water up to about halfway up that little 1-cup skinny mason jar. Make sure it's not too hot. Okay. Kerr ball mason. It's a canning jar. And I also have a 2-cup glass measuring cup set in here. And we're going to be putting some squares of soap in. The reason I want the 3 individual mason jars is they're going to be each of my colors for the dots on the Yoshi eggs. And then of course the large one I'm going to be using to dip all of the eggs to be just out layered in white. I have a couple different brands of soap that I like to use. I have some shea butter out on the table, some goat's milk out on the table. This is just regular white soap. It is a glycerin, so it's organic. And I do find that I prefer the glycerin. I have a lot of allergies. Tons of friends have lots of allergies. And it's a great, I find it a great way to be able to make and have fun without allergy attacks. When it comes to buying your soap, there are lots and lots of places. You don't have to buy it at one particular spot. There's any of your craft stores. You can Google it online and find anywhere that you'd like to buy it. So this idea came to me. I used to do these when my girls were little, and when they were little I used to make them for my girls and my nieces, and they'd be Easter eggs in their basket. And we were at the gaming store the other day, Retro Gaming here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and talking about it, thinking about it, and the idea crossed my mind that instead of just making it an Easter egg, why don't I make it a Yoshi egg? So this is also going to be one of the stores where if you're in town and you want to pick up one of the products, you'll be able to. Or you can always just contact me. Now for each little individual jar itself, I'm going to just do 2 cubes. As you can see on this 2-pound block, we have all these nice pre-marked cube sizes. They make it much easier to cut up for one, but it can also let you know how much you need to portion into each. So there's 2. Here's the next 2. It is slippery. Great news about this is even if it gets all over the place, it's a really easy cleanup. I actually had some shea butter break on me just 2 days ago, and it got all over my stove. But again, a soapy sponge, and it was good. Very easy cleanup. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut up the squares to put in my dipping glass, my 2-cup measuring glass container. So I got a little impatient. It can take up to 12 hours to melt your soap in your crock pot. So I did put it in a small pan on a very, very low flame on the stove, and I'm still using this to keep the soap warm and at the temperature for dipping, and then also for coloring the extra soap for the dots. Right now what I'm trying to do is I'm just starting our dipping process. So as you can see, you just drop your egg in there, let it drain most of the way. You don't want it to drain too much because you need it to make a little base. So you just need that base to cool for a second. That way it can stand up. It's not going to look as pretty if it just rolls around constantly. So I'll get the first coat done on these last 3. We'll get a little bit of round 2 going. Another thing to watch out for is if you leave it in your hot soap for too long, you can lose some of the pigment from the soap that you're working with already, and it will change the color and you won't have the most brilliant white shining white. So let's do that. Alright, those are set. This part's going to be a little bit faster because we can just rock it over, drop it, swirl it, lift it, and set it back down. I am not too concerned about all of the little flecks of like soap on the little mat here. This is just wax paper I'm using, but I'm not really concerned with it because they slide off just like that, and I just pop them into a little container and they're reusable. So however you want to do it, you can just set it like that, maybe do a scant drag to get some of the extra soap off. Just trying to remember where you're at, that way you roughly know how many dips you've been through. I mean, granted, of course, we're going for white, so it's gonna take us a while. Welcome back. So, having a couple little minor issues with some of the dipping. That's always gonna happen. So as you can see, we're building up our white layers. We've almost disguised the color. One thing I forgot to mention is you really have to keep stirring this this liquid soap, because it gets a film on it really easy if the room you're in isn't very hot. And for me, it's, you know, like December 30th in New Mexico after a blizzard, so this room is not the hottest. So we're just finishing up doing a dip, a swirl, lift, let it drain. I'm going to do one more round on each of them and show you some of the problems I've been facing this last couple dips as we're really building up the layers. They're starting to become denser, heavier, and just a little bit more of a pain. I've got doing pretty good on all my colors. Pretty happy with most of them. The main one is, as you see right here, the film. I let it sit just long enough that it got the film, and it just did it to this one too. I'm going to see if I can save this one right as we're talking and try and smooth it out, because it happens that fast. So that's going to need some touch-up work too. Quick stir. I've got 3 more to dip. I think this will need to go back on the oven. Not on the oven, I'm sorry, on the stove. I get a little tongue-tied when I'm frustrated on occasion. I'm pretty sure everybody does. So first we're just going to give that one last dip. I got 2 more here. I just want to stir. As it gets cold, it's getting thicker, so it's putting on a more dense coat. And I'm actually going to start right here and call it good before the next one, because it's just going to mess it up. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to scrape my knife. You want some good pressure on this when you're doing it. And as it's chilled, as you can see, it just slides right off. It's one of the nice things that makes soap making such an easy cleanup process. It's soap. So this one right here, I had just cleaned off the bottom from it sticking when, as I set it in, it reformed that soap layer and looks awful. So all you're going to do is you're going to take your little butter knife and just kind of peel it back. Think of, you know, Shrek. Onions have layers. Every time you dip this in soap, you're building up a layer. So we just want to simply remove that last layer. It comes off pretty easy. You can use your finger to kind of heat and blend down some of that edging, and that will look good after the next dip, believe it or not. And here we go. This one is salvageable easily. So this one, as you can see, it's built up a thick bottom from being dipped, so we're just going to cut that off. It's nice and soft. It does give you a peek at what's on the inside. Put that in there, and I actually think I can just mold this with my hand to finish smoothing this one out. It's not often that it lets you do so, and it works, but this one is just still warm enough that that'll get one more dip and it'll be just fine. So you'll want to go through, and just like you saw me clean off the bottom of this one and clean up the sides of this one, if you get that cold film, it's going to be frustrating. I apologize. I know. I'm glad the camera was off because even I get frustrated. Of course I get frustrated. And then just on all of them, before we do our dots, we really do want to come through with our little knife and just clean up this bottom lip so that it looks real nice. It sets, it'll still stand just fine, but we don't want all that extra product just, you know, in the way. And then you'll have a beautiful egg. As you can see, we've got the 4 finished already. Well, not quite finished. I'm going to do a little heat work on them to make sure those dots are adhered a little bit more. But the technique I ended up using, I went through quite a few trying to figure out what the best one is to get these dots on there. I tried just sticking them on. I tried hand painting them on. None of those ways really worked. So what I found works best is to just use this that I've already scored it with and to cut out the dots. I then took the green I wanted to make the dots with and just poured it out on a piece of wax paper. It would have worked better if I had a hot cookie sheet under it, then I could have spread it a little better and I wouldn't have such, you know, lumping problems. But it's all a learning experience. And then, you know, this is an example of our almost finished. This is my breaking point for the night. So here we have a beautiful Yoshi's egg, traditional with the green dots. And I'm just going to be doing a little more heat work on it just to seal up these little edges a little bit more. I really don't want to dip it because then I'll lose some of that brilliant green color. Alright, talk to you soon.